If you're a litigator who writes a lot of briefs, you probably had to do a table of authorities at some point. And you might have even been required to add hyperlinked citations to the brief as well. Table of authorities is often required in appellate courts. And while it's rare to see hyperlinked citations be required, judges absolutely love this because it makes it so much easier for them to review the brief you're submitting. These can be a gigantic pain to build into the document. So in the video today, I'm going to show you the easiest possible way to do this using Claude with DocketDrafter. I'm going to go through a handful of different ways to accomplish this, starting with the worst possible way to do it and finishing with the best. By the end of the video, you'll be able to add table of authorities to any brief you want, even ones that aren't mission critical and even in courts that don't require it. Before we talk AI, I want to go over how this actually works in Word under the hood and different options you have. So as we can see here, I've got a blank table of authorities. And one thing you might do is just start typing like it's a regular page. So you would go something like, citation 1, ... Hopefully you count enough of the dots. And then you add the page number over there. And then you just scroll through the brief, find the different citations. Okay, so it looks like we got this statute here, CPLR 3211, and that is on page 3. Then we're going to go up here, and then we're going to add CPLR 3211 or whatever it was, ... and that was on page 3, I believe. As you can see, this is super error prone, and if you got a paralegal, this is probably something you would have them do. Now, obviously, I don't recommend this for a number of reasons. First of all, it's just really time-consuming and error-prone. Second of all, it doesn't allow you to react to changes in the document. And what I mean by that is if later you add a new section to the document and CPLR 3211 moved from page 3 to page 4, nothing in the table of authorities is going to get automatically updated. You would have to manually go in and basically restart the process from scratch. So I wouldn't recommend doing that to anybody. The better manual way to do this using Microsoft Word is to go into References and then add Insert Table of Authorities. But in order for this to work, you actually have to go and manually tag every citation in the document, and that's going to allow Word to automatically compute the page numbers. So let me show you what that looks like. I'm going to scroll down, and again, we're going to find the first citation, which looks like CPLR 3211A7. I'm going to highlight it, and then in the References tab, I'm going to go ahead and click Mark Citation, and then you're going to see here that we have to provide the short and the long citation. I'm going to click Mark, and then now that is actually marked as a case. And I realize I did it wrong because this is not a case. This actually needs to be a statute. And so you not only have to make sure that you're tagging everything, but you got to put it in the right category, like case, statute, regulation, whatever. And because I have this paragraph icon enabled, Word is going to show me a lot more detail in terms of what's in the document. And that's why I'm getting this weird bracketed syntax here. Basically, under the hood, Word has added some tags in the document that's going to allow it later to go and put it into the table of authorities. So we're going to go ahead and remove that. Don't worry, it's not going to appear in the final document. And let's go ahead and tag a few more things so we can see what it looks like. We're going to go ahead and tag this case here. So we're going to highlight the whole thing. And again, you got to make sure you highlight the entire thing. We're going to go back into References, and we're going to hit Mark Citation. And again, this one is a case, so you got to make sure that you're in the right category there. Go ahead and hit Mark. And now we've got 2 things in our table of authorities. Let's just do one more for good measure. And I don't really like how it's adding that paragraph back, but we're just going to go with it. And okay, here, so we'll go Leon versus Martinez. We're going to go back into References. We're going to click on Mark Citation. And again, that's a case. We're going to go hit Mark Close. And then you can scroll back up into your table of authorities. And again, I really don't like this paragraph thing, but it's just adding it. And then you're going to click into References again. And now if you click Insert Table of Authorities, it's actually going to add the entire table of authorities. So let's go ahead and click OK. And you can see here, it's still not great. Like for some reason, this cases up here is a completely different font than the rest of the document, which is really annoying. But at the very least, it added these references automatically. So it added CPLR 3211, and it added the right number of dots for each of the entries, and it made sure to add the right page, which was 3. Looks like I made some kind of mistake because obviously CPLR 3211 is a statute, but we're just going to leave it at that. So if you're going to go with this route, you or somebody on your team would have to manually go in and basically tag every single citation like I was doing here. I'm not going to subject you guys to that. Now, if you want to add the hyperlinks, it's going to be very similar, but you're going to have to do another pass. So you would highlight the actual text that you want to link. Then you could right click and then type in hyperlink here. And then now you're going to provide an address. So in this case, CPLR 3211, I've actually pulled it up on this screen over here. This is a direct reference to the New York Senate website. So I'm going to go ahead and just copy that URL. Then I'm going to go in back into Word and I'm going to paste it and then click OK. And now you'll notice it's turned blue. And if I click on it, it is going to take me directly to that page. So this is totally doable, but again, it's very manual. And now you actually have to go and find the URLs for every single thing in here. So every statute, every regulation, every case. And if you don't have a list of that, that can be very, very time consuming. And it's also very easy to miss something. So now we're in Claude, and the first thing I'm going to do is actually ask it to just list all of these citations that it finds. And what I mean by that is you and I are able to read the document and we can pretty easily identify like, oh, CPLR 3211, that's obviously a statute. The cases are pretty easy to spot too. And you don't even need to be a lawyer to do this. It's pretty clear where the references are. And Claude is really, really good at pulling these out. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to put in the Word doc into the chat window. And I'm just going to tell it to dump out all of the references that it finds. So let me write that prompt. I'm telling it, can you output all the references in this document? And then I get a little more specific and I say, I want you to list statutes, cases, regs, etc., group by type. So Claude is going to read the Word doc, and basically what we just did manually, identifying where the various references are, it is now going to do automatically for us. And it's going to be very accurate, probably more accurate than you or I would, because it's just really good at this kind of thing. It's starting to output them, and of course I had it group by type, so it's going with the cases first. We see Leon versus Martinez. That's one that we found in the original document and actually added to the table of authorities. And then, of course, it also found CPLR 3211, A1, and A7, and the other references as well. Claude is pretty smart, and it realized right away that because I'm asking about pulling out all the references like this, it figured out that I probably am going to want a table of authorities next. So I'm going to go ahead and click yes and see what it does. I saw that Claude took a screenshot of some document it created, and I wanted to take a look at it. It doesn't really look right. I mean, I think all of the cases, statutes, and regulations there, but obviously the formatting is way off. The leaders, the dots rather, are just completely missing. There's this weird space on the 4. The font looks wrong, and it overall just doesn't look that professional. Like, you wouldn't want to submit this to the court. But in fairness, I am going to let it finish and see what it reports back, because I did kind of just poke into its internal state there. Here's the table of authorities that Claude eventually spit out. I will give it credit. It looks much better than the screenshot from before. That being said, we're not quite there. One of the main issues is this is actually just its own Word document. So Claude didn't go into the existing Word document and populate the table of authorities. It created a new Word document. And what that means is we would probably have to take the old Word document, convert it to PDF, and then use a tool like Adobe Acrobat, or honestly just have Claude do it, and take this table of authorities, convert it to PDF, and then insert it into the documents. And it's totally possible, and this is still way better than doing it manually. But I would want to tweak the formatting, so you might want to go back and forth with Claude, or even just manually go in here and make sure that the styling looks right. But the other issue with this, though, is we're not relying on the Word native features. And so Claude had to guess with the page numbers. So there might be issues with the page numbers, like it might not have actually figured out the correct page number for each of these. But more importantly, if we want to later edit the document, this is not going to get updated. It's not even connected to the original document. So we're going to have to go back and tell Claude to read it again, go through this process. It's going to eat up a lot of tokens. It is still a bit error prone, even though we're using Claude. And it's also just slow. Like, who's got time for this? But if you were to continue, what I would tell Claude is to actually now create a PDF with all this stuff. Another issue is the page numbers. So in this document, we're going with Roman numerals for the cover page, TOC, and TOA. So this cover page starts with Roman numeral 1, and then the table of contents is Roman numeral 2, and then the table of authorities is Roman numeral 3. And this seems pretty easy, right? Like, okay, we'll just slap a 3 on the table of authorities and start from there. And if it goes past one page, then put a 4 on there. Not so fast, because we've got a table of contents too, and that appears before the table of authorities. And in this instance, it is true that it's occupying exactly one page, Roman numeral 2. But if this was a longer document, this might be occupying 2, 3, or we don't know how many pages until we're basically done writing it. And so what that means is you kind of have to wait until all of that's done, until you can have Claude go in here and add the page numbers. And the page numbers down here might have to change. And right now they're missing. I didn't tell Claude to do that. And the page numbers in the actual table itself might have to change. So overall, it's just a giant pain. That being said, this is still potentially usable. So I would just go into Claude and tell it, hey, can we splice it into a PDF like with the original document? And then I'm also telling it to add that Roman numeral 3 there. And again, keep in mind how informal I am when prompting Claude. It's okay to say something like splice it into a PDF like with the original document. I don't know that that's proper English, but that's probably going to get the point across. Claude understands that it needs to render the first document to PDF, remove page 3, which is the table of authorities, and then render the table of authorities to PDF and like splice it in there basically. And if you didn't have Claude, this is something you or maybe your paralegal would probably have to do in Adobe Acrobat, and it would be super annoying. And here's the Roman numeral 3 that Claude added to the table of authorities document. So now over here on the right, Claude is finished, and it did a pretty good job, I will say. I mean, here's the cover page. It's got Roman numeral 1. The table of contents has Roman numeral 2. And Claude is not always able to update the field codes in your document. And so stuff like table of contents or table of authorities, if you are using the built-in Word features, the view on the right is probably not going to work. You're probably going to have to download it as a Word doc, right-click, and update field for it to render. So this is not a bug on Claude's part, but it's just not able to do that. The table of authorities looks good, and the reason it didn't need to update the field codes here is because, well, it wasn't using those. It kind of is a fake table of authorities. Now I'm going to try to have Claude add a hyperlink, and I'm not going to provide URLs for every single one of the citations. I'm just going to give it one in particular and tell it to add a hyperlink. So I'm just asking, can you hyperlink CPLR 3211? And then I gave it the URL to the New York State Senate website. This one's probably going to be trickier because, again, it's going to have to open the original document and go into the internals of the Word XML, which is difficult for even Claude to do. So Claude did add the hyperlink to the table of authorities. It did not add it into the body of the memo. That's probably just a prompting error. I could have been a little bit more explicit, but let's go ahead and click on it and see what we get. It looks like the link is correct, but we'll go ahead and open it in Chrome. And yeah, we're on the exact same page. So Claude is able to do that. Okay, so now we're going to do the exact same thing, but use DocketDrafter with Claude. Now, because DocketDrafter connects directly to Claude, it's going to look somewhat similar to doing it originally. And what we're going to do is just draft the memo from scratch. And I'm going to show you that DocketDrafter handles all of it. So I got a prompt here that I actually had Claude help me write. But basically, I'm saying, hey, let's draft a memo on support, giving it some details about the parties and all that. Of course, this is all made up. And let's go ahead and see what it does. You can see here that Claude is figuring out that it needs to connect to DocketDrafter. And of course, this is something you just install in the connectors. Claude's going to handle the rest for you. So Claude has been working for a little bit, and one of the things it's doing is actually going out into the internet to do some of his own research. I didn't give a ton of detail in the prompt, and you're going to notice that Claude went out and did some web search, and it's looking for reliable URLs. And when I was showing you earlier that in the manual version, you had to go in and add the hyperlinks, Claude is going to do that automatically, and DocketDrafter is going to make sure every time a citation is referenced anywhere in the document, it is going to be hyperlinked for you. And another thing about DocketDrafter is that this becomes part of a firm's citation library. So if Claude in one session validates that a statute or a case exists and saves its URL, the next time you log into DocketDrafter, if you want to reference that citation, it's already going to be saved. So Claude doesn't need to go back and search the web. It doesn't need to go on a wild goose chase. Your library just continues to improve over time. Okay, Claude finished doing its thing. Let's take a look at the document. We got the table of contents right here. Here's the table of authorities. This is totally done by DocketDrafter and Claude. You don't have to do anything at all. And if we scroll down into the document, you're going to notice that it's actually linked to certain cases. So if we click here, that is going to take us directly to Court Listener, and that's exactly what we wanted. Now, I didn't really do a great job of prompting this, so it didn't actually tag every single citation. I can see here that it missed CPLR 3211. You could obviously go into Claude and have it add this. How do I go ahead and do that? So I'm telling it, make sure we tag CPLR 3211, and then I did provide it the URL. It probably would have been able to find the URL using web search on its own, but if you give it the URL, you're definitely going to get what you want. I should also point out that if you have your Claude connected to a legal research database like Court Listener or any other source of statutes, rules, or regulations, that also works with DocketDrafter because Claude can talk to Court Listener, go and do some research, and then send the URLs to DocketDrafter for tagging in the final document. So what I'm doing here is just a shortcut to show you guys that you can manually add stuff, but it would work a lot better if you had access to a good API in your Claude. Okay, so here's the brand new version. If we look here, we now do get to see CPLR 3211 with all the page references. Now, it did put it under rules. Again, you might want to be explicit and tell it, hey, this should be under statutes, but Claude's able to handle that for you when it's connected to DocketDrafter. And then now if we scroll down to the first place it was used, we can see that it's clearly hyperlinked. You can click on it, and we've got that URL ready to go. And I want to highlight again that you didn't need to tell Claude to manually update the table of authorities. As long as it goes into DocketDrafter and tags everything properly, that is all going to be completely handled for you. To summarize, you should at least be using some sort of AI to help you with table of authorities and hyperlinking citations in your legal documents. It's definitely possible to get a big speed up and productivity boost just using Claude. But if you want a system that's purpose-built for this, that has a library for all your citations, and that just works under the hood without you having to think, definitely check out DocketDrafter. I'm going to leave my email in the description, and I'm also going to provide a link to the website. I'd be happy to sit down with anyone and talk about exactly what this would look like for your firm.